If you're just shooting in the native format of your mirrorless camera, you aren't going to be able to get the maximum image quality and dynamic range out of your camera, let alone cinematic footage. What photographer wants that? So what's the answer? This is ungraded log footage. Looks pretty gross, doesn't it? That ugly, though, is giving you something pretty important. Increased dynamic range. It may not look pretty, but what you can do with it can really make your photography sing. Every photographer wants that. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I am going to show you how and why you should be shooting in log format as the first step to get that cinematic look in your photography. This is going to be super easy. Roll with me. I'm going to take it from the beginning, shooting with the camera, to the end, finished images. I'm going to use my EOS R and Premiere Pro to shoot the footage and color grade it, but you can use any camera. The principles I'm going to show you here will work with any camera and any software that allows you to color grade using a LUT. What the heck is a LUT? LUT just means lookup table. I'm going to radically simplify it. We're not teaching color grading in this video. Basically, think about it as a filter that brings your log footage up to how you want it to look. Very simplified. You color graders, please don't throw rocks at me. This is a 101 video. Okay, the first step, let's get the camera set up to shoot in log. Let's get your feet wet on this so we can get you out shooting in log footage. Okay, your very first step is you want to set a white balance. It will make your life a whole lot easier in post if you go ahead and do that now. So I'm just, for example's sake, I'm in tungsten light here in the studio. I'm going to set it to tungsten. If you really don't know what you're in, you can use automatic white balance, but white balance in post, the less you have to do, the better. Okay, now we're going to set the EOS R to shoot in log. So I'm going to go to the menu. This is camera number 4 when you're in the cinema or the video shooting mode, Canon log settings. I'm going to select this, turn on. I'm using 8-bit, 10-bit requires an external recorder. I'm not doing that. I'm going to keep this very simple. 8-bit is on. You want view assist on, which gives somewhat of an approximation of what it's going to look like when you're shooting more than just looking at the raw log. Color matrix neutral, you have 2 options, Cinema EOS Original and Neutral. I'm using neutral. Hey, experiment with this, see what you like. With the characteristics, you have 3 settings. Strength, saturation, and hue. In terms of sharpness, I'm going to increase the sharpness, probably right about here. Again, do this to taste what you feel comfortable with. So right now, this camera is set to shoot in Canon log. Now you want to set your ISO. For Canon log, for shooting in log, the native optimum ISO is 400. Okay, so you want to try and stay near 400 as much as possible. So you also, I'm shooting at 1/24th of a second, so I'm going to shoot at 1/50th. 1/48th would be perfect, but it doesn't have that, so we're shooting at 1/50th. Now, what if I go out in the bright sun? Well, if you go out in the bright sun, what you're going to want to get is one of these. It is a variable ND filter. It screws right on the front of your camera like this. Once it is on your camera, you then can turn the ring like this to dial in the amount of light getting to the sensor so you can keep your f-stop and shutter speed. It's basically like a set of sunglasses for your camera, and this varies you got on this particular one, we've got some markings. It varies how much neutral density filter is getting in front of your lens. Really sweet for working outside. You're really going to wish you had one of those. Okay, when we talk about a cinematic look, we want to set a frame rate of 24 frames per second. That has been a cinema movie standard forever. We're shooting in log, we're shooting at 24 frames per second, which then allows us to shoot at 1/50th of a second shutter speed. 24 frames per second, 1/50th of a second shutter speed. That's your beginning steps into cinematic. I am going to be doing an entire video on the cinematic look coming up soon. Hit the subscribe and like button if you want to be notified when that video comes out. Okay, the camera is all set. All right, the camera's all set. Go out and shoot some footage. And when you load the footage, you look at it, it looks totally gross. That's okay. That footage has what you need. It has expanded dynamic range, meaning the blacks and the whites are controlled. It should have gotten you to the point where you don't have anything totally underexposed or you don't have anything blown out. When you apply color grading and a LUT to this footage, it should sing. It should open up, and it's sort of like Play-Doh. You can mold it and do a lot more with it than you can with your native video footage. Okay, I've been talking a lot about LUTs. I've chosen one that I'm using to demonstrate in this video, which I think is a very straightforward, easy to use LUT. There are quite a few out there. I'm sure you may have seen them. You may have one. But I chose this one. It's from Gamut. They have two different LUTs that I'm using for the EOS R. One is a neutral basic Rec 709 LUT. Again, I'm bringing up a lot of terms. This is a basic video. And the other is what they call a cinematic LUT, which has a little bit more extreme effect. When I bring the footage in and start grading it, I'm going to show you the difference between the two. As always, it's artistic choice. I'll link to the LUTs that I'm using in the comments below if you want to give them a try. This video is not sponsored, but I really like these LUTs and you might as well. Okay, so we've got Premiere Pro loaded. I'm going to queue up the clip that we're going to be color grading. Now, I'm going to show you a way to do this. I am not a professional colorist. I'm going to show you a very simple way that will just radically improve the look of your footage without having to study how to be a professional colorist for 6 months. Okay, I have created a sample sequence. I have dragged the clip we're going to be working on into this sequence so you can see there's the ungraded footage. Now, what we're going to do, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the color tab and Lumetri scopes, as you see right here. This shows you the scope view of the highs up at 100, the lows down at 0 of the footage. Now, you could go in and start doing basic correction now. That wouldn't be wrong. But with the LUT I'm using, I find that if I go to Creative first and load the LUT here, I'm going to browse, bring up the LUT. I am using the Cinema Gamut LUT for this one because I want more color. As you can tell, that's too much color. But you have an intensity slider right here. Before you do the intensity, what I like to do now that the LUT is in place is go back into basic correction and deal with the highs and lows in the scene. So I'm going to increase the contrast a bit because I think that really helps bring out what we're seeing. Yes, the color's too severe. We're going to work on that. I'm going to bring down the blacks till they're right below, just about to touch this 0 line. And the highs are pretty close. I might bring down the highlights just a touch. Okay, so now we have, as you can see, compared to the ungraded version, a lot of contrast, right? We've got good contrast. Now we can go back to the creative and adjust the intensity of the LUT to taste. right? This is all about to taste. How intense do you want the effect to be? The reason I used the cinematic is because I wanted some bold color in this shot. So there it is. That is all I do to get a much improved look from what our original clip was over here. Okay, now we're going to look at a different clip, and we're going to use the other LUT, the neutral LUT. This clip is very low contrast, but the color contrast is very high. So what I'm going to drag this clip over to the timeline here. So there's our ungraded clip. Now, let me show you what happens if we use the cinematic LUT on this one. Just starting out, before I do anything, that's too much color saturation. So let's instead use the Rec 709 LUT. Okay, now we're much closer to what the image actually looked like at the time I shot it. So let's go into basic correction. We need some exposure here. We're going to bump up the exposure. Definitely, usually, as always, some contrast. Forgot to put my scopes up. So kind of hard to grade unless you know what you're looking at. There we go. Okay, let's bring down the black. This, as you can see from this Lumetri scope, this is a really different clip. So I'm going to bring down till we get near 0. It still wants a little more exposure. See what's happening? The image is changing a whole lot as we do these changes. Now, in creative, I'm still at just 100% on this LUT. Suppose you want a little more color. Well, you can crank this in more if you really want a little bit more. To me, the colors are changing at this point. So I'm going to keep this one at 100, do my basic corrections. You could play with it a little bit more, but you see where I'm going with this. Every clip needs a different level or type of correction, but it really was no more work. It was just an initial different choice on which one of these two LUTs I chose. Okay, that was your first step in how to get cinematic footage by shooting in log and doing a basic color grade. Your next step will be the video that I'm going to be coming out with on the cinematic look. A lot more to say about it. I really appreciate you guys coming and looking at this video. As always, I welcome your comments. And until the next video, cheers.